My name is Courtney Owings. I am an embedded mental health clinician here at Responder Support Services, and I've been here almost 3 years. I originally went to school to be a math education major. Calculus 5 and I did not get along, which was differential equations. And I got a D in the class, and as a major class, you can't get a D. So I started doing human development and psychology, which I really liked, but that's not what I wanted to do. I could still do math ed with a minor in math and that major, except I needed to do an internship as my undergrad internship as a teacher assistant, and there were none left. The only internship available was at the Marriage and Family Therapy Center. So I accepted that, and I went, and I loved it, and I was like, okay, changing my plan. So I finished up with human development psychology and applied to Appalachian State for a master's in marriage and family therapy, and that's how I got started. I did community mental health for 12 and a half years. So I did, when I first graduated graduate school, I was in a community mental health agency up in Watauga County in Boone area, and I did outpatient therapy and group therapy for children and adolescents there. I also did mobile crisis, so I still worked with first responders pretty closely. And then when I moved down to Asheville, I did intensive in-home therapy for at-risk children and adolescents and trauma work, specifically with kids, doing intensive in-home. That was not normal therapy because that was not in the office setting. So I don't like to be sitting in the office. I do it, but it's not where my passion is. Before I worked here, I was a therapist at our local detention center here in Buncombe County for the inmates. So I had been working really close with the sheriff's office and the deputies and the detention officers for 3 years. And I had a critical incident at the detention center where they sent me to talk to Rick to make sure I was okay. And in that process, Rick asked me to join the team. So it was a very different experience, but a good one. I was happy with that because after my critical incident, there was a suicide in the detention center and I had to help with it. And after that, I realized I knew first responders' jobs was hard, but I didn't realize how hard, right? There's that line of like, we're an outsider, so we just look in and we see it, and you see it on TV or whatever. And it's like, well, I could do that. No, it's way harder. And so I realized then that I would rather help the helpers, than doing the job I was doing. I think the biggest change was just how vulnerable as a therapist you have to be with them for them to trust you. Because in school we're taught you don't self-disclose. That's a no-go, like you don't share. But that doesn't go with the first responders. Like if you don't share, they don't. In my experience, that's been the biggest change for me, is realizing that I have to be truthful and vulnerable and open about my life too, so that they feel safe and comfortable to talk to me about their stuff. They're so real. They don't sugarcoat anything. They just tell you straight up most of the time. They're very guarded, but if they are coming in for therapy, they want to do the work. They want to not feel this way anymore. They want to get better. They want to be okay and not feel the way they do right now. I start at 7 a.m. and I do 7 to 2:30 so that I can pick my kids up from school every day. So that's kind of a nice thing about working here. I might see clients here in the morning, and then I might go over to Mission Hospital to the EMS lounge, hang out for a little while, see some paramedics, and if they get a call, I'll be like, hey, can I hop on? And I hop on the truck with them and we go on the call. At the rescue squad, we have an office in the squad, so I'll see folks from the squad there, and then when I'm done seeing clients, I'll jump on the truck if they have to transport, or we'll go to a rec and see that process and talk with them, or on a search. So that's kind of the day-to-day kind of stuff. And of course there's paperwork and phone calls and all the normal therapy stuff we have to do. As an embedded clinician, it's so different. It's not, I mean, yeah, again, I do therapy every day individually in the office, but there's also these moments like when you're riding along with somebody and you're on a bad call, you get to talk to them about like, God, that was really screwed up. How are we gonna how do you handle that? And you talk about it right there. And so it's not this lay on the couch and talk about your feelings. Like, we're gonna talk about your feelings, but we're gonna talk about it while we're going 100 miles an hour down the highway to help another officer, right? Or you're going 90 miles an hour in the ambulance to get somebody who's in cardiac arrest to the hospital. Like, we get there, we transfer care, and then you say, okay, that was a lot. From an outsider, how is that for you guys? And we can openly talk about it. There's so much you don't know about somebody sitting in an office. You don't see their life. And as a marriage and family therapist, we look at the total system. So you're an individual, but we also look at like your family life, your all of the layers going outside of you that are impacting you. So what is your whole system doing? And in individual therapy, being in an office setting, we don't get that. So I feel like this setting, yes, we're doing individual therapy or couples therapy in the office, but we have this little glimpse of their lives outside at work, and know how that stuff is impacting them as an individual, or as how it's impacting their family. So a federal deployment is when we get a request from either the Department of Interior or Department of Agriculture for a critical incident. And a critical incident is normally a really bad fire, somebody has died in the fire, several people have gotten harmed in a fire, even civilians maybe, to support the forest staff or the firefighters from Bureau of Land Management or the Forest Service. And we go and just give critical incident supports for them. Rick will ask if any of us can take it, and we volunteer, and then he lets us know if we get it, and we are given a date, like you fly out this date, and you start working this date, and you go, and this is how many days you're going to be there. And so sometimes it's like we fly out one day, we work one day, and we come back. So it's a lot of traveling. There are some deployments that we know of ahead of time for anniversaries of critical incidences. We'll go and support the staff. So this past April, I went out to Santa Fe for the anniversary of a big fire and did a whole week of talking with people, doing individual sessions, doing trainings, just being a support. We had a work day. We went out in the woods and we rebuilt a fence that had been burned. But we knew ahead of time. I knew like a month before. And so I flew out one day and I stayed for 5 days, and then I flew back. So I was gone a whole week. And those are a lot of fun. And you get to see and travel and go into the different national forests and just be a support and talk to the folks and get to make some really good connections. I have never been as happy as I am here. For lots of different reasons, it is very fulfilling. It's the clients do the work, which is awesome. There's the excitement of, like, we get to do ride-alongs, we get to go on the fire trucks, we get to go on the ambulances, we get to go to, I got to go to Yosemite last year and tour the park while I was also doing debriefings and crisis interventions, and same with the Santa Fe Forest. Like, you get to do so many cool things, and this is a really great and supportive environment. As an employee, I have never had coworkers as supportive and a boss that's as supportive. So I've been a therapist for almost 17 years, and this is the first time I feel actually appreciated by my boss. Like, when you see Rick, he'll say, "I'm so glad to have you on staff. You're doing such a great job." No boss does that. Not in the mental health field. You would think that in mental health they would do that. They don't. So it's so supportive. And is this hard work? Very much so. This is probably some of the hardest work I've ever done as a therapist, because there's so much trauma. And we inevitably have some secondary trauma. But there's so much support to get through that. So that's why, that's the best part of this job. For me, the most fulfilling part of this job is actually helping people. So many people come into therapy and they just want you to fix them. And we can't do that. We don't have magic wands. We can't fix people. And I think the most fulfilling part for me is actually having the first responders do the work. A majority of them come in knowing that they're not okay, and they do the work, not just in therapy, but they do the homework. Because that's where the change happens, is actually doing the work outside of here. Learning the coping skills, great, you learned them, but are you putting them into practice? You can do that in session, but are you doing that outside of session? And I think that's the most fulfilling part for me, is seeing them do that and not need me anymore. Because my job is to work myself out of a job. And they make that possible.